Call the Township of North Huntington Board of Commissioners special meeting for Thursday, August 13th, 2020 at 7:03. Roll call, Manager Silka.
Commissioner Stump.
Here.
Commissioner Atwood.
Here.
Commissioner Blasco.
Here.
Commissioner Zona.
Here.
Commissioner Bevan.
Here.
Commissioner Goss.
Here.
Commissioner Higas.
Here, could everyone please stand and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If any residents would like to speak tonight, if you could sign the book at the podium, please. Thank you. Our first resident is Kelly. If you could just come up to the podium and say your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, Kelly Yerkison, 141 Falcon Ridge Drive, North Huntington, 15642. Hi, thank you for having me again. Good to see everyone. I just wanted to address some of the items that came up during the planning board meeting related to the chickens. I know that there were some concerns and we just wanted to talk through those. The first being that they had mentioned 1 acre of land for qualifying to have the chickens. I just want to note, put that out there that only qualifies about 12% of the landowners across North Huntington to own backyard chickens. A 1/4 acre would be more than adequate for raising the hens. Most other communities have similar guidelines, so just something to take into consideration when looking at the ordinance. Also, requiring neighbors to approve the chickens should be a consideration of our civil liberties. So taking that into consideration also, we ask that you keep that in mind. I know that the dog argument is highly discouraged, but neighbors can own dangerous dogs. We didn't have to sign off on our neighbors owning Mastiffs, Rottweilers, and Pit Bulls, all of which are around us. So something that we ask, just please keep that in mind whenever you're considering this ordinance as well. Also, not allowing the birds to free range, that's something that was brought up as well. That could cause the birds to create more noise. I know from personal experience with our chickens, if we keep them enclosed all day, they like to yell and they're not real happy unless they're out following the bugs. So, they mentioned the tractors for the chickens. If you're moving them in a tractor, the bugs can still move outside of where the chickens are. So if they have free range, there's a better opportunity for them to collect more of the ticks, mosquitoes, etc. A few other items that were brought up. Salmonella. Please keep in mind that salmonella is only contracted by ingestion, not by backyard chickens, so proper hygiene should be observed at all times. Pet stores sell lizards, turtles that can carry salmonella, and let's think about our favorite holiday, Thanksgiving. Cases of salmonella also go higher at that point too, just due to lack of hygiene and thoroughly cooking your turkey at that time. Another thing is the chicken farms. We're not asking to have hundreds of chickens on a small parcel of land. Chicken farms can be dirty. They're a lot more birds. So when we're considering, 4, 6, 8 chickens as a backyard chicken owner, that's something to take into consideration as well. And we just, we're only looking to raise a handful and, they should be maintained. So at the end of the day, if that's a problem, then it should be an ordinance violation as well. The fact that they're currently illegal and that they should remain that way was also brought up. As a society, we have to grow and expand our ideas and beliefs. More and more areas are looking to adopt such ordinances. We've already mentioned some in the past, but now Derry and Pine Richland are also being challenged to allow them, as well as Unity Township. In U.S. history, there have been other things that were illegal and became legal. Alcohol, the right for women to vote, interracial marriage, birth control, even singing a partial part of the national anthem. So please just consider that also. And then a few other just comments. There's the idea about other pests and rodents and bears and foxes and hawks. It's okay, we keep putting in more and more developments and more homes. Where do you think these animals go to live? So not only are we building more homes, but now we're kicking them out of their natural environment. It's not because of our backyard chickens. So just, keep that in mind as well. So again, I thank you all. We appreciate all of the work that's been done on this so far. And just thank you for your time.
Thanks. Our next resident is Craig. Just name and address for the record, please.
Craig Yerkison, 141 Falcon Ridge Drive. Just here also to support for the change in the ordinance. I wanted to appreciate, just to say how appreciative we are of you guys looking at this and the actual moving forward, the planning commission coming up with an idea instead of what is currently stated. I mean, I'm just here to just say thanks.
Thank you. And one more resident tonight. You want to come up and just name and address for the record, please?
Marianne Mahalovich, 12981 Route 993, Ardera. I've been around chickens all my life, and I have raised them, and I have shown them. You can show them. People today don't trust exactly where their food comes from. You can trust it if you have the eggs growing in your backyard. You know exactly where it came from. Nowadays, you can't trust. Those eggs you get in the store are really old, let me tell you. So that's one thing, and I agree with her, because if they're taken care of well, you should not have a problem with anything. If people learn to wash their hands, like we've learned in this COVID-19 thing, a lot of things would not, happen. So like I said, you don't want to kiss your chickens on the lips, you're obviously going to get salmonella, okay? The next thing, too, is we can't control the deer, and we can't control the raccoons. We can't control any of that, okay? But deer ticks, are on the deer. They go everywhere. Guinea chickens, which are a little different, guinea chickens are a natural predator of ticks. They love them. And I've always said, if every municipality released so many adult guinea chickens into the woods, we wouldn't have a problem with Lyme disease, because they would be gone. And I have experienced this personally, okay? This year, the deer ticks have been horrendous, if you've noticed. Also, it's a good way to raise your kids. They learn a lot of responsibility taking care of animals. They learn also, how life works. It's a real good way to raise kids. Also, if you use the word poultry, like I said, that takes in chickens and guinea chickens. Every person that has chickens should have 1 or 2 guinea chickens for the ticks, okay? And like I said, if they're well taken care of, you won't have any problems. You'll have more problems with the raccoons getting into your garbage and spreading that around than you will have with the chickens, trust me. But there are other birds too, like quail, which their eggs are edible too. They're real little, but they're real good. So, it would be I think would be an asset, because North Huntington is still pretty rural in places, and I really think this would really do well for the community. Especially with the safety, of trying to eliminate the deer ticks and the Lyme disease and stuff. So people are allowed to keep snakes. They can keep snakes in their house. They can keep other animals that are dangerous. A chicken's not going to hurt anybody, okay? And kids can keep them for pets. And you can have them for a long time. I had a goose for 17 years. Okay, he was part of the family, all right? We all knew him, and he was great. Geese keep snakes away. And some people like ducks, and, people get attached to their animals. So other municipalities are allowing people to have chickens, and I think everybody should have a right to know where their food comes from. I would be more than happy to answer any questions about any poultry question. I've been around this all my life, and I did show poultry, and that's another activity kids can get into with this whole thing. So, like I said, like she said, diseases come in chickens from battery houses with thousands of chickens. A chicken's life doesn't last very long. If they quit laying, 2 weeks later, they're out there in the meat case, okay? It's not going to come from backyard chickens. It does not happen, okay? Especially when they're well taken care of. So I thank you for your time.
Thanks. I saw a few people coming late. If anyone that maybe came in late that's interested in speaking, they can come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, I'm Ashley Egan. I live at 260 McDonald Drive here in
Ashley, what's your last name, just so we have it? Sorry.
Egan, E-G-A-N.
Thank you.
So I've been to all the meetings. I've watched all the easements and the colors of the front of the buildings, and I've spent lots of time with this and getting to know each and one of you and talking with things individually, and I appreciate all the thought that has gone into all of this. I do have a copy of the proposed ordinances that the Planning Commission has come up with, and I'm happy that we've even gotten this far, because previously I know people have put a lot of time into not even getting to this. But I have some concerns with this. I think what we came here as a community to ask for is backyard chickens. That's what we want. We want chickens in our backyard, not chickens on our 1 acre farm. So what we are asking you is to represent us that has come to you every week, to the planning, to the zoning, to this, to each one of you individually. We have asked for backyard chickens, and I hope you consider that that's exactly what we are asking for. I know a lot of yous are starch against that, and some of yous had showed interest in it, but really what we are asking for is not 1 acre farm chickens. And also, we're okay with paying a little bit to have you come look at our setups. We're okay with that. Give you $150 if we cross the line. Come tell us. You know, we understand there has to be rules, there has to be limits, but to tell us that we have to knock on our neighbor's door and beg them to sign papers, anybody who's touching your property, I think it's a little over the line as well. You don't have to ask them for any of your other pets. I think it's a little silly to be asking your neighbors every year if it's okay. Can I keep my pets this year? Seems a little off to me. I'd like to suggest that maybe that not be considered as well. I think Virginia has some suggestions in the ways of what we can do to modify this to better advocate for what we have come here for. So if you would take that into consideration as well, it would be appreciated.
Thank you. Is there anyone else interested in speaking tonight? All right, not seeing anybody else. For response to citizen input, I believe everyone spoke about backyard poultry, which is on the agenda tonight. So if the board's okay, we can address that at that time. All right, work session discussion topics. Manager Solka.
Okay, the first item on the agenda tonight is a county hauling update. I thought that since we're 6 months, over 7 months into the contract, I've asked Mike Turley to kind of just give a brief synopsis, since he's the day-to-day trash guy. He can kind of see, where we are from internally and just, provide the update. Mike?
Thanks. Generally, as you know, we've been working for a number of months to try to improve the level of service that we're getting from the garbage hauler. We've had a number of issues, a very rough sort of transition, and we're 7 months in, over 7 months in now. So just a little bit of an update. They recently made a number of customer service changes that we insisted on. And I don't know where that's taking us. We're going to need a little bit more time to evaluate that. To be fair to them too, we have to be fair to them when we evaluate the improvements. So they did make some significant changes, and we're hopeful that we'll see some improvements with the customer service part of the business, which has been a particular problem. So we'll provide another update in the near future. We have seen some improvement in some of the general service problems like misses and numerous other things that we run into through the months of July. We just reviewed the July report, and those complaints were down significantly. And so that's improved. That's encouraging. We've seen some improvement at times, and then we've regressed at times too. It hasn't been a linear improvement that we'd like to see, but these numbers were significantly better. So I thought that was encouraging, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see if we can continue on this. We need to continue to improve because it's not an acceptable level of service. We've not gotten to what we believe to be an acceptable level of service, but we're going to need more time just to evaluate if they're on the right track, and we're going to get to where we need to get to.
Any questions for Mike? All right, thank you.
Okay, the next item is traffic signal maintenance contractor review. As you know, North Huntington Township has a significant amount of traffic signals, and we've been using traffic systems and service for a while now, as a lot of people do. But what we had some concerns as a staff as we were getting some inconsistent billing, some timeliness of service calls, and maybe some deficits in adapting some modern technologies. So what we wanted to do was we did an RFQ, we published a bid for it, and we received 2 responses, simply because there's not a lot of people doing this out there, and the ones that are doing it are really busy, and there's nobody which we can consider local. I mean, Robinson is probably the closest, and Bentleyville. So what we've done is we've got two RFQs, and Traffic Control provided a quote for us that kind of has a little bit different maintenance approach. Currently, we're paying $140 an hour for a technician and a truck minimum, and then also we pay $275 a month for a monthly service, cleaning out the cabinets, replacing bulbs, doing filters, which I consider almost like a lot, like the $14.99 oil change to get you into the dealership as a loss leader. So they're touching our stuff every time, and they can come back with more suggestions. But Traffic Control System basically doesn't do the basic maintenance. What they do is they train a couple of our staff to do that, and also train our traffic patrols and everything to be able to make some of the adjustments without bringing a crew down. And then they also do it at $120 an hour for the basic bucket and crew. Now, these folks they go with City of McKeesport, Green Tree, Ross, Scott Township, Peters. Their references, as Mike did for us, are impeccable. People love these guys. What we'd like to do is we'd like to move, to traffic controls. I mean, we'd like, when we did the bid, we got this, and I'd like, if the board is so inclined, to be able to put it on to the agenda for next week to enter into a professional services contract with these folks, because I think it's time for a change. And especially as we're going through another traffic system update with the Sync Up project, we need to make sure that we have the contractors on board to support what we're putting in.
Any questions? Jeff, I just had one question. You're saying that some of our staff would be able to do the maintenance after they were educated on what was needed. Do we have the staffing, capacity for that currently?
Yes, because it's just a monthly, for most, is dusting out the cabinets. So you basically would take the cabinets, divide it by 4, do so-and-so every week.
Okay.
And then and then the police would be trained to do some of the, whenever it goes on Blink. And we always have traffic officers, we have sergeants, so we'd make sure we have the staff available.
Okay.
And just on the other ones, on the other municipalities, I said this works out very well, having
Someone
to be able
in-house.
to have because you can do it immediately.
Jeff, is there an upstart cost to this? No.
No, I mean there might be some cost onboarding as they come in and do some inspections, but we have no engagement fee. There's nothing that we have to pay them X amount to come in.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks.
Okay, and my final item today is, as it's grass season, I know as commissioners you're getting a lot of calls. We get a lot of calls, and it seems our vacant homes, our vacant lots are kind of in limbo. If something's being actively marketed, we know there's a realtor who doesn't want to have it overgrown. But however, there's something that are up for the limbo of tax sales. Like the property owner doesn't realize if it goes up for tax sale, you still own the property. The county doesn't own it. If the bank forecloses, unless they take possession, everybody's still responsible for the grass. So, and at the same time, we don't want to expend public funds to go maintain private property. And, we can do it if it's an occupied home that we go through the system, then we can lien the property, and hopefully if it sells, we get it. But a lot of these vacant properties, They're vacant and dilapidated for a reason. They're not going to sell anytime soon, so to go out and lien it, chances are it's going to go to judicial sale, and we're not going to get the liens anyway. So what I've had in other communities, I'll give you just a draft to look at, is a vacant property maintenance ordinance. That vacant properties and vacant lots put up an escrow fee that we hold, that if they don't maintain it, we can go out, we can actually engage a third-party contractor, because we're not taking the money out of our treasury, have the lot you brought into compliance, and then pay it out of the escrow fee, then have the property owners, make the escrow fee whole. So it's something that I'd like to, I don't have a finished ordinance. If it's something that the board has an appetite for, the staff would put together a little bit more in-depth ordinance for review for the September meeting. But it kind of gives us another tool in the toolbox to help the blight, because as I put in my memo, blight creeps. You start with one property, two properties, and all of a sudden you have 10 properties, 15, and then you have a serious problem. So this kind of gives us a tool to hopefully stay ahead of the curve, but at the same time not having public funds maintaining private property.
Jeff, is that a contract you have to put out for bid, or we can hire without contract for that?
What we would do is we'd put out for bid for a contractor to do it, to get a time and materials cost. So that way we're having the same, considering it's probably not going to be over the bid threshold, we would just do an RFQ to get prices.
On this ordinance, I'd like if you could look at section 1480.05, the exceptions. I'd like there to be a time limit in that.
Okay.
Maybe 6 months or 9 months, so that somebody's not indefinitely marketing their property and putting too high of a price.
And I will actually tell you that as I read an article of a Westmont, which is in Cambria County, it's a suburb of Johnstown, which was one of the affluent communities, they're now suffering blight, and they can't touch it because somebody put a for sale by owner. They bought it at an old mansion at Sheriff's Sale. They live in Lancaster. They put a for sale by owner, sign in the window, so it's actively marketed. So yeah, we would definitely write around to make sure what actively marketed means, and a 6-month time frame would definitely be a plus.
Any other discussions on what's in front of us? Board wants to maybe review it a little bit more and get back to Jeff with any comments or things you might want to change.
Yeah, I would like to see a updated version that is more applicable to our township.
Absolutely. Any other discussion?
Okay, that's all I have on my
All
agenda.
right, thank you. Plan and engineering topics, Director Fonzie.
Good evening. I have 3 items for you tonight that came through the Planning Commission on Monday, August 3rd. The first is Subdivision 5 and Site Plan 2 of 2020. This is the Penn Irwin Place. This is the old Penn Irwin Motel site, and Colony Holdings, the owner and developer, wants to split that parcel in 2. You could see Lot 2A there highlighted in yellow, and there is a proposed AutoZone retail store going in. So that's what the parcel looks like. It's right next to McDonald's. The other piece, Lot 2B, is going to be developed at a later time. That actually crosses over the Irwin line. So Irwin's going to have to be a part of that next site development. There's the picture of the AutoZone, the proposed footprint. The applicant is asking for one modification, that's to have parking closer than 10 feet to the building, as our Saldo states. The Planning Commission approved it with that modification, and then in the memo, you could see the 7 conditions that are listed. Most of them are third party, so we have the Conservation District still has to sign off on it, NHTMA. They're gonna need 3 highway occupancy permits from PennDOT, so those are all in the works right now by the owner. And again, the Planning Commission recommended this for approval with those conditions. There are 2 entrances. You could see the eastern entrance is supposed to be a little bit steeper. That's on the right side of the drawing. And then further down on the left, that should be a little closer to grade. There's still going to be a little bit of elevation there. As it stands, they have plenty of parking for the use that they're proposing. And there were no real major issues that came out of this. Does the board have any questions on this plan?
Ryan, that's a pretty steep hillside backing there. Are they doing a retaining wall along the backside of that?
There is a proposed wall, yeah. They're going to be excavating quite a bit. So there is a wall in the back. There's
Okay.
going to be a lot of material coming out of there. Because this, I don't know if you remember, this was looked at before to develop this site. This was several years ago. And that developer didn't plan on doing much excavation, and he just couldn't meet the street grade to meet Route 30. It was just going to be way too steep. So this time they're coming in and definitely excavating some material.
Hey, Ryan. You know, there's going to be a lot of earth to move. No doubt about it. So now what happens to the construction vehicles that are pulling the earth out of there? Clearly, they're going to transport it from this location to another location. So are we going to be looking at spillage from earth spillage onto Route 30? I think the answer is going to be yes, unequivocally yes.
Yeah.
Who's going to be responsible to keep that clean? Because, you know, a couple stones get out, people run over them, throw them up. Before you know it, we got somebody that's got a cracked windshield.
Yeah, that'll be the developer. That'll be in the commercial developers agreement that'll address that type of site work and excavating and transporting.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Ryan, my next concern would be lighting going into the neighboring properties, adjacent properties. Do they have a lighting plan that's low?
For the houses in Irwin?
Correct, yes.
Those houses will actually sit above the site. So with the 90-degree
poles
cutoff, or there can definitely be some hoods on the light poles. If there's wall packs, you can put shades on them so that the light's projected on the building, and there shouldn't be any spillover. In fact, the photometric plan, you're not allowed to have spillover. So that comment was addressed by the applicant.
Does this new AutoZone have anything to do with the old AutoZone at Penn over there in, what is that?
North for Sales?
No, the Norwin Hills.
Oh, on Norwin Avenue?
Yeah, isn't there, that's another AutoZone, isn't it?
That's Advance.
That's Advance. All right, correction.
Yeah, I think there's two in Jeanette right next to each other, Advance and AutoZone. I know there's an AutoZone in North for Sales.
Okay.
And then we have a Advance up here at Maltz Lane and Route 30, so
Everybody ought to have a hot rod.
I guess.
I'll get it started. Thank you.
And that's the exterior elevation. That's what it'll look like. It's pretty much their corporate colors, and building materials will meet what we have required in the ordinance. Okay, the next item is Site Plan 4 of 2020, the Valvoline Instant Oil Change. And as you can see, there's this odd parcel here on Route 30 that will actually be accessible through the private drive through the North Huntington Square development. So you can see on the left of the drawing, there's the Eaton Park. So if you're familiar with that, you exit out of Eaton Park, make a right on that driveway past Conforti's Pizza, and then there's a strip of grass. That's what this lot is. So they're proposing a 2-bay instant oil change, as cars will come in off of that private driveway, and they'll merge into one lane and then exit. It'll be a one-way coming out of there. There's a better look. They're going to be connecting to the sewage that's in the middle of the parking lot. This one's fairly straightforward. They have a little stormwater detention area on the bottom left there that's going to hold back water. They're going to be connecting to an existing system. There's a stream that's actually piped underneath that parking lot and sort of daylights on the other side of the entrance into that development by Bob Evans there. Planning Commission recommended this for approval. You could see the conditions on the memo. Again, a lot of third-party issues. There's a landscaping plan. They are going to have some landscaping that's going to screen the building from Route 30, high-level and low-level plantings. Same thing with the photometrics. Make sure it doesn't spill over onto Route 30. We'll get those hoods on the lights. This is what the building is going to look like with the signage and the colors. And again, approved materials from our ordinance. Any questions on that one?
Did Don Housley get any additional information on the flood zone that he was gonna check into?
Yes, and they deemed they were going for the Lomar or Loma, and it was determined that because that was piped that it should be updated. So there wouldn't be subject to the requirements as if it was an open channel. So yeah, he was satisfied with the applicant's response to that. Okay. And lastly is subdivision 9 of 2020. This is the RWS Morgan and Campbell boundary line revision in Kingsbury. I want to give you a snapshot here. This is the existing lots. The Morgan lot is in yellow. They would like to purchase a little over 3 acres from the RWS lot, which is in blue. And that lot is approximately 7 acres in size. It spans the border of North Huntington and Manor Borough. So RWS would like to sell the North Huntington portion to the Morgans in order for Morgan to be able to put an accessory structure on that. So in order to do that, he has to be physically connected. So he needed to buy some land off of the neighbor Campbell, and there's a strip there which by ordinance has to be at least 25 feet wide. This is providing 28 feet of width. And the Campbell lot, the green lot, I don't know if you noticed, it gets a bump out from the RWS lot, so they actually lose no land. They have a net zero balance. So that what they're giving up to Morgan, they're going to get back from RWS. So with this setup, RWS would keep the lot in Manor because there is a gas well on it. Campbell, again, his lot doesn't change in size. He just gets a little bump out on the eastern property line. And Morgan is able to add that little over 3 acres to his lot to do the accessory structure. So lots don't have to look pretty, they just have to be legal. Any questions on that one? Okay, that's the 3 items we had at the Planning Commission. And at the Planning Commission, we also talked about the backyard chickens. And we reviewed the draft ordinance that came from staff. And again, opinions on both sides, much like this board. And we had one request. They seem to be wanting to move forward with an ordinance, which means they didn't want to throw it out immediately. But they did ask for the portability option of the chicken tractor. So when I resent the ordinance to you guys, I had the changes in yellow. So we had to go back and make those edits to make room for the chicken tractor. So again, this was a baseline. This was a staff exercise. And then we took the input from the Planning Commission. I would like to hear this board's comments on it. We can make whatever changes you agree on until there's an ordinance that we'd be able to vote for. And I'll turn it over to you guys.
Ryan, before we start our discussion on this and go back to the citizen input on this, I would like for the department heads to speak freely on this issue, as you guys would be the ones responsible for addressing the issues that might arise. So if you want to give your honest opinion on the feasibility of this and the practicality on the implications for the township from both Mike, yourself, and Manager Silka. So it's up to you
I'll go
guys.
first. I mean, I think we arrived at the 1 acre lot. You know, we hear the residents that it was very restrictive before with a 10 acre up to 20 acre lot size minimum. So without owning a farm, which not a lot of people do, we did decide on the 1 acre, which was a 90% reduction of what the current ordinance has. But there was also some worry about there being too much density in these smaller neighborhoods, smaller lot neighborhoods. So a 1/4 acre lot, you know, the more, if there's a nuisance complaint or something that can bring about a nuisance, one way to deal with that is distance. So we thought about the distances from the structures and the overall lot size. The idea being that a lot that's 1 acre in size is probably bordered by another lot that has a decent amount of size. So that's kind of the two major things that at least I wanted to focus on. Again, that can be debated. I was hearing things from both sides of the aisle. So when we came up with that, it seemed like nobody was happy. So I took that as a compliment because it seems like both sides would have to concede on something. So it's not a one-sided argument.
Now, would the addition to an ordinance like this put a stress on the department or any of the departments, because we are already running on a limited staffing and...
Well, just from the standpoint, we're adding a new permit, and again, with lot size, you see that table and the number of lots in the township and the percentage of lots, so the chances would go up. So the lower we make that lot size, the more people that could apply. So we're just doing administrative things as far as just receiving the permit, reviewing the permit, and then any inspections that would have to be done with the structures, then our building inspector gets involved. The code enforcement officer would be doing inspections based on complaints, so yeah, I mean, the greater number that are allowed to do this, the more stress will be on the planning and zoning department.
With that said, how many families have expressed interest to you in doing this, because as of tonight, I see 3 families that are here
That's what I'm hearing just from these meetings.
out of 33,000 people. I don't think, I gotta be honest with you guys, I don't think a lot of people are gonna want chickens in their backyard. I don't think we're gonna be overwhelmed with a significant amount of people saying, man, I want to apply. I don't think people want to be bothered with raising chickens and realizing the work that's going to go into it. And if they do, probably within a year, they're going to find themselves going, hey, I don't want these hens in here anymore. So my point is, we've got about, how many residents in this township? 30-some thousand.
31,000 plus.
Yeah. I bet we'll be lucky if we have 100 families want chickens in their backyard. Plus, if we say no to them. I like math. I also like people's civil liberties. And I'm a big fan, it's a virtue to have our liberties. And I think we have a right, and the people have a right. And I think if we keep things clean, and they keep things clean, and they're willing to accept responsibility, I'm not a fan of violating people's civil rights. I don't think that what they're asking for is immoral or unethical. I say we give it a couple years, let's give it a try. I'd like to see a massive reduction on that space, though, because I'm going to tell you something right now. You've barred a lot of people when you say 1 acre. I don't know why we can't try things on for size. We can't say totally yes, we can't say totally no, but there's nothing that says that we can't try it before we buy it. And we can always find ourselves back here 2 years, 3 years from now and say, hey, guys, we tried it, it didn't work, let's go ahead and close up shop on it. But I don't think for us to sit here and tell people right off the bat that we're going to violate your civil rights by saying no off the bat, or make it to a point where it's unacceptable. Nobody has 1 acre. I don't know, Mr. Schuster, you build homes, beautiful homes, by the way, nice homes. Your acreage on your standard home? Most of them are close to 1 acre now. And you have a covenant in place that prevents folks from having animals. I was raised on a farm. Right, yes, sir. Okay. Sure. Okay, so he has a covenant in his homes, and people buy into his community because of the covenant. Clearly, these are people that people are not going to want chickens in that. Bingo. So already, we've decreased that footprint of 33,000 down to how many? Mr. Schuster has a lot of beautiful plans in this community. So they're out.
But can I add one?
Not to interrupt you, I think.
Yeah, I don't want to interact with the audience members, but
Okay.
again, this is just a question out loud to answer. Why do developers put covenants into place? And that's to protect the value and the integrity of the community. But if we could go over to, I'm sorry, Zach. If
Yeah, I was
Jeff
going to say
and,
you wanted
Mike
to go
wanna
ask. Yeah, I
weigh
was just
in.
going to let them respond to
Yeah.
you, and we can debate it maybe a little bit more. Just hearing from staff.
So Ryan, one last time, how many families have come up to you and talked to you about this, about chickens in the backyard?
To me personally, none.
None.
Just from what we've heard at the meetings and through our code enforcement officer.
I'd like to say, we can't, none of us can sit here and say there's going to be less than 100. You can't say that. You don't know what it's going to be. None of us know what it's going to be. I mean, and I think to say, let's try this for a couple years and see if it's good, I think that's doing a disservice to the citizens of this township, because what do? There's families here that don't want to get rid of their pets. Let's let 500 families get pets, and then in 3 years tell them they have to get rid of their pets. You imagine what's going to happen in this room? You won't be able to fit everybody in here. I mean, I think that's doing a disservice to even say something like that. And I'm going to go back to what one of you guys said too, and I know I brought this up last month, and I haven't heard anyone much talk about it other than from you, Ryan, is the stress and the money this is going to cost this township to do this. I think it's first of all, like I said last month, who is going to go out to do these inspections when a complaint comes in? It doesn't really state that in the ordinance. It doesn't state it.
That would fall to the code enforcement officer.
Code enforcement officer, it says, is responsible for all the fees and all the permitting, but it doesn't really say that he would go out on complaints. I would assume that's who's going to do it.
He would be the one, yeah.
And we have what, one code enforcement
One code
officer?
officer, one building inspector.
So if we get a complaint that, if I call a complaint and that a chicken coop is not it's closer than 40 yards from my house, 2 people are going to have to come out at least to measure with a tape measure, you know? That's what I'm looking at. What's this going to cost us? We're going to be sending employees out there to do this work that already have a job to do, that have a full 8 hours to do. And I know you've alluded to that. I mean, that's a concern of mine. And I haven't really heard that here. We're all fiscally conservative people on his board, but nobody seems to care what this is going to cost the township. And I'm looking at that. So that's a big concern for me there. Until I'd have trouble voting yes on this because it doesn't specify any of that. This doesn't specify who's going out, how we're measuring things, who's doing that. Again, we go out and we look at chickens, and again, I said this last month, but we're going to look at chickens to see if they're healthy. I mean, are you trained in telling when a chicken's healthy? No. I'm not. I mean, what do? Do we get trained in because we can, the township can seize it. And if this would pass, we can seize people's chickens. Who's gonna seize a chicken? And we're gonna euthanize somebody's pet? I don't feel comfortable with anyone in this township doing it because I don't think anybody's trained for that. So, as I said last time too, do we get people trained, or are we hiring a vet to come out? That's not specified in here either. Do we hire a vet to come out, and what do we pay a vet? When I took my dog to the vet, it was $200-300 just to walk in the door of the vet. So, I mean, I think this is $150 for a permit's not gonna cover anything that the township's gonna have to pay for this. And again, I can't vote for this not knowing all that stuff that I just said. I mean, I don't think it goes far enough. And again, I don't like to tell people what they can do and what they can't do either, but if we're gonna have something like this, I think you need a little more detail than what we have here. That's my opinion.
Brian, did you still want to hear from?
Yeah, if
Manager
Jeff or Mike would like to
Silka
speak, if they'd
Mike?
choose to.
No.
That's all right.
Okay, whenever we looked at this, we took a look, there was a couple, draft orders that's floating around. I think what we've done is, from a staff perspective, not having a crystal ball and saying, are we gonna have one chicken permit, or are we gonna have 1,000 chicken, permits? We try to put forth the simplest ordinance that we can possibly find. And as we looked at other ordinances, they didn't get into health. They didn't get into regulating, is a chicken healthy? Is it not? Is it a vet? It's like, we took the nuisance. Is it odor? Is it structurally deficient, structures? So we try to take it down to where it'd be the least impactful if the board would choose to pass this ordinance on staff, knowing that we have one building inspector, we have one code enforcement officer. And, and going, the 150 is obviously an arbitrary number, because, if we have 1,000 chicken complaints in a year, we'd obviously have to come back and say, you know what, we need help enforcing this. If we have no chicken complaints in a year, we're good. Is a fee ever going to pay for the officer? Absolutely not. I mean, no permit fee if something as, loose as chickens on chickens is ever going to be able to. We're not going to be able to put a thumb on and say we need to have a permit of $265 to cover our costs. So what we did as a staff is we tried to get the most simple ordinance that we can to regulate it, but at the same time not overburden staff, which we wouldn't be full-time agricultural officers, which we don't have that capability. We don't want to engage that capability. We want to basically be able to say, there's a structure, there's a setback. If they're encroaching upon others' enjoyment of their life and their property, then we can get involved. So, I mean, I can't tell you what the impact is going to be because I don't know what the impact, nobody has called my office. Nobody has called me personally, yay or nay. So, I mean, we've heard the three people, the folks who've spoken at every meeting, but we've heard nothing else official. So, like I said, it's a crapshoot. And the 1 acre I think we use, which isn't a large residential lot. It's kind of an average modern size, and it also gives the ability to have the setbacks mean something, that you're not on top of each other. That was, as I said, this was a multi-jurisdictional exercise with the staff to try to come up with something to give the board to consider. This is our recommendation. It's the board's purview to vote yay, nay, yay. Let's put everything back in. Let's take everything out. Let's allow what we want. But what we want to do is come up with something that we feel that, if passed, could be manageable.
Mike, did you have anything to add? Yeah. You want to hear my opinion? Yeah, I believe that's what Brian wanted.
You asking? you shall receive. I was in favor of the 1 acre. I felt, and this wasn't done quickly or carelessly. We spent a lot of time trying to evaluate things, and I was in favor of 1 acre and no less. We have trouble getting people to cut their grass sometimes, and the burden to the township to take people to the magistrate and to be the time involved is a real issue. And it's going to happen because not everybody is as careful as people ought to be. And I feel as though there shouldn't be an obligation to accommodate farm animals on quarter-acre lots. The answer is to have a larger lot, just because some of the purposes of zoning and what we do is to prevent nuisances and issues that I believe we're going to see.
Paul, did you have anything to add on? No, I have nothing else. All right, I don't want to leave you out there. I don't know if the board, I know Brian wanted to hear from the staff. I don't know if the board had anything to offer, more to discuss on what's in front of us.
My issue with this is the adjoining property permission. I don't feel it's our right to infringe on personal property rights, and I do think that the acre could be lowered a little bit. I'm not a chicken expert, but I would like to kind of see some scientific numbers. Maybe we could, I don't know, call someone at Penn State or something and see what those numbers look like as far as how many birds can fit in a lot and still be healthy. And I also think we should make sure it's no more than that lot could handle. So whether they come in at a half an acre and say, oh, you can have 4, or maybe if they have a whole acre, they can have 6. Maybe that's something else we can look into.
I feel like what we're hearing from our administrative team is that this is not the best idea to shrink the property. So I know that we're kind of split on the board of this, and this is something that maybe the entire board should come around. It's very simple, without going into all this language. A chicken is not a pet. It is livestock. And there's no discussing that. Can anyone make anything a pet? Absolutely. If residents want to keep that chicken in their home, more power to them. I wouldn't want to go into that. But what I would amend to this is to say, hey, it's a 3-acre minimum with 10 hens. And for every additional quarter acre, you get yourself 1 additional hen up till you get to the 10-acre requirement. And we say that you have to go 100 feet from the property line, because what does it make a difference if you have a 10-acre lot and build your chicken coop 15 feet off of your neighbor's adjacent property with a $25 fee, just to let the planning commission or the zoning and planning offices know that this is here. Again, that's a 70% reduction of our current lot size, and it's kind of seen as a compromise. Yes, do dogs and cats offer benefits? Absolutely. Does a chicken maybe offer benefits? Yeah, but it's livestock. It's not a pet, and there's no other definition that I've seen that says otherwise. So I don't know if the board would be interested in going something like that. That's, again, a compromise that larger lots can kind of be seen as mini farms, but we're not here to raise livestock in the township. We're a residential community. So before we get into the debate and discussion, that's just something I wanted to see if there's any thoughts or feelings on that. But that's something I would feel comfortable voting yes on. What we have currently, absolutely not.
I've been watching online the comments that people put, and what I'm seeing is the vast majority of people in this township are in favor of backyard chickens. And whenever you're talking about enforcement, you have to remember there are already people out there who have illegal operations. So that's more of an enforcement pressure on staff than if you legalize to make a quarter-acre lot where you could easily raise 4 to 6 chickens on a quarter-acre lot. Regulations should only exist to prevent someone from being harmed or impacted. Here, if you had a quarter of an acre and placed chickens, what we're saying, 40 feet away from a neighboring structure, 20 feet away from a property line, 4 to 6 chickens is not going to create a burden. And if you make it 1 acre, you're effectively saying to the people in this community that want the opportunity to raise chickens that they're not allowed to do that. And so then what are you going to do with all of these operations out there that already exist? You're going to have to enforce that. And I would rather make something legal so that we don't have an enforcement burden than to say, hey, we're going to keep it illegal and still have that enforcement burden. Whenever I checked with Allegheny County's regulations, they said that they allow chickens in a 2,000 square foot lot. I'm not recommending that at all. I think 10,000 square foot or 1/4 of an acre would definitely be sufficient space to raise a few chickens. And while we're talking about this ordinance that we've proposed, whenever you get into the permitting requirements, there's some wording there that's inconsistent because we did make some changes to this ordinance. When you get into the permitting requirements B and C, we've gotten feedback saying that people don't want to have to ask their neighbors for permission. And I think we have enough protection in an ordinance to say that if you get a complaint, that's really all of the wording that we need there. So I would say that we should get rid of that B as far as letters from adjoining property owners. And then C, once a permit has been issued, new neighbors post-issuance lose the right to object to a neighbor's chickens. I think a neighbor should always have the right to object to a neighbor's chickens if they're not keeping their chickens properly. And then to submit plans and specifications for the construction of the hen house. Originally, I thought that was a good idea, but the more I look at that, that creates a burden on staff. So I would say to eliminate that. And number H, or I should say letter H, chickens will not be permitted on properties with single-family attached homes. That should also include any rental properties because we don't want somebody coming in to rent a property just to have chickens on that property and then cause a problem for the landlord. So that should include any rental properties. And if you go to a smaller lot, maybe it should exclude anything on R1 too.
Virginia, I'm sorry to interrupt. That was addressed in letter G.
Letter G.
We removed all the rentals and other types of
Owner-occupied
housing.
single family.
But
I think that should be spelled out though, because you can have an owner-occupied property that somebody could turn around and sublet.
But then it's not owner-occupied.
Yeah.
If you have to be owner-occupied, you have to be occupying the structure.
and when you register, you have to prove that you're the
that
owner.
Clear though. I think the wording there should be clear. And then the fees. By making that $150, you may exclude somebody that is in a lower income range. And I think somebody in a lower income range should definitely have the same ability as somebody that could afford $150. I think a $50 fee might be reasonable, or a $25 fee, but that's just my thoughts there. And then whenever you get to item D, chickens must be kept in the hen house. We don't make dogs stay in dog houses. So I think hens should be allowed to roam as long as there is a fence on a property that's going to keep them within the boundaries of a property. I think they should be allowed out in the grass to eat the ticks and what have you. They should definitely be in a hen house at night that is a protective hen house. Letters F and letters J, that it talks about these chicken tractors and hen houses should have at least 4 square feet per chicken. I think that's excessive. I think if we make that 2 square feet a chicken, that should be plenty. I mean, we don't want these hen houses to be huge either. And I've seen designs of them where you can buy them prefab and they're not that big. For 4 to 6 chickens, they don't need to be huge. I would also like to see that we put in there no composting, that chicken manure must be turned into the soil immediately, or it needs to be put out for the garbage, because that's what's going to draw rodents and odors and that sort of thing. And I understand that if you compost properly, that keeps down odors, but I think that's maybe a compromise if you say no composting. And one person on the planning commission brought up about slaughtering a chicken on their site. Every now and then you're going to need to euthanize a chicken. I think somebody should have the option to euthanize a chicken. Now, I don't think we want people slaughtering for chicken consumption, but I think there should be a provision in there to allow somebody to euthanize a chicken on their property. And then as far as fines and penalties, that letter A, you have a $100 fine, and that really should be consistent with the fees originally. The fees originally here, we've proposed it to be $150, but a $100 fine is less than that. So I think we should make the original application fee less and then keep that fine $100 and so forth as it's written. But I do appreciate staff working on that and trying to come to some agreement.
Virginia, if I may just make one technical comment. On D with not requiring submission of plans or specifications, without having those plans, we don't know if it's going to trigger a building permit or a zoning permit, because there's a square footage threshold that kicks it into a building permit as an accessory structure. So that's why I think it's important they submit plans for the structure.
Oh, that sounds reasonable then.
I think it's 264 square feet and below would be the zoning permit.
Well, maybe we could make the application say that if the size was going to be over so many square feet, that you had to submit plans and specs with it. But I definitely think that people should have the liberty to use their property as they see fit, as long as they're not infringing on someone else's rights. And here, I think we already have a lot of people in the township doing it, and we should find a way to legalize those people, not keep them illegal when they're not hurting anybody.
If I can jump in just a few things, with all due respect, to say we have some people that are voluntarily violating the law and we should change the law to accommodate them, I mean, that, to me, that's a scary statement. I think next month we should change the speed limit on Route 30 because nobody follows that. And I mean, you could say that about every law. I mean, that is a scary thought to say, that let's make these people legal. They went out voluntarily, violated our ordinance in this township, and some of them put their neighbors out because they got complaints. And now we're gonna change the law because of that. I mean, that's a slap in the face to their neighbors that made the complaint. That's a slap in the face to a lot of people. And it worries me too that, I mean, first we were talking about chickens in a chicken house. Now we're talking about chickens running free and possibly slaughtering chickens. I don't want slaughtering chickens beside my house. I don't think anybody wants that. I mean, what are we getting into here? We're gonna be watching a chicken being slaughtered beside my house now? I don't see where we're going. We're going the opposite way on this thing. I don't get it. And I just to respond to what a couple of the residents said about the salmonella, we keep hearing you can't get it unless you eat chickens. But if you go on the CDC website, that's not true. You can get it. It says it's in the feces of chickens. It's in their feathers. It's in their beaks. You can get it from touching them and putting that in your mouth. And it says that right now, as of July 29th, there's 48 states that have outbreaks of salmonella from backyard chickens. So you can get it from touching chickens. I mean, it's right on a CDC website. Me being in law enforcement for all the years that I was, I came into this with an open mind. I want to see facts. I want to see evidence. And that's what I did. I did a lot of research, and as I said, the CDC spells that out right there. I mean, from all the evidence that I have, this is a bad idea. I would go with what Commissioner Blasco said. I would go for like a 3-acre, but I think it's a bad idea to have it in a residential area.
I just would like to say that I think the vast majority of people that already have the chickens didn't realize they were disobeying the ordinance.
No,
So
I'm sorry.
I think we have to keep that in mind, that we have an awful lot of rules and regulations in this township, and the average citizen doesn't know about those.
Now, Virginia, you did make the comment, I believe, at the last meeting that it's the residents, the buyer's responsibility to know what they're buying into. So basically, you're contradicting your statement from last month. So when you buy your house, you have to know, do you allow chickens? Everyone here has purchased a property where they had the ability to go and research the laws. Does the average person do it? Absolutely not. But now you're telling me, oh, they didn't know about it. And as Commissioner Zona said, hey, they're speeding, so they ran that stop sign. Let's get rid of the stop signs, make the ones with the white around them optional. We're really starting to stretch, and it's rewarding. It's rewarding bad behavior. We say, can chickens provide harm? Are they going to nibble on you? Possibly, but it's really a financial harm. When you have these chickens next to you and someone builds a chicken coop out of chain link fencing, that's certainly why, I know Mr. Schuster left, but that's why developers put covenants in to protect the financial stability of a neighborhood. The illegal chickens, I mean, they have to go. They're illegal. There's no way that we can grandfather them in. That's just like saying, hey, someone snuck across the United States border. Yeah, they didn't know. They didn't read the rules. It's bad government in that way. A way around the letters from adjoining neighbors, let's go with the bigger parcel. Again, I believe probably 3 or 4 of us can probably say, hey, you go 3-4 acres, no need for letters. If you're saying that you can't afford a $150 fee to apply for these chickens, how are you going to afford the chickens, the feed, the coop, the maintenance, the upkeep? We're talking about slaughtering our chickens. Okay, if I slaughter my aging dog in the backyard, is that also appropriate because I didn't want to pay the $200 vet fee to have it euthanized? We keep talking best case scenario, and that's great. That's ideal, but that's not realistic. And again, our department heads are saying this is going to be a problem, not directly. I don't want to put words in their mouths or say, but that's what I'm hearing from them, that if we go down this path, it's going to make the township a lot more thinly stretched there.
I'd just like to respond back to that. I think you took what I said out of context, because I was referring to people who have protective covenants in their deed.
That's similar to just not following the ordinances of the municipality you live in.
Right, but a real estate agent should be telling somebody you have a protective covenants, or that people should be asking, do they have protective covenants? That's different than somebody knowing all of the ordinances of the township, of which there are very many. There's one document in a deed that somebody should know whenever they buy a house, that they should know whether they have those protective covenants. And you talked about euthanizing a dog. I'm talking about euthanizing a chicken. I'm not talking about slaughtering chickens. I'm talking about euthanizing.
But can't you euthanize your dog as well? I mean, that's going to be
You're talking about euthanizing a dog, and yes, a vet will give you a shot to euthanize.
And I'm
your
sure the
pet
vet
at
could
home.
do that with a chicken as well. And that's going to be the problem. What happens when we get a complaint to the police chief and says, hey, my next door neighbor just euthanized a dog? And he says, well, we can say we can do it with chickens. It's an animal.
All right, so we don't do that then.
I mean,
I don't understand what seems to be the problem here, that we have to argue, get down to the nitnoid facts of things. You know what? If you want to euthanize your chicken, you take it to the vet. There, that ends that.
Well, that's different. That's different than
So
what
now
was
we're
said.
going to start discriminating. Okay, so I don't have 3 acres of land, so you're going to discriminate against me because I don't have 3 acres of land.
but you're going to discriminate.
So now I'm going to have to move. Now I've got to move and buy a $500,000 house. That's not fair to me. What about my civil liberties? What about my right to be able to feed my family and have healthier food on my table so I can consume? Because just like the good woman said earlier, we don't know exactly what's coming from these farms that are producing these eggs and how long they've been sitting around.
Eric, I think all of everyone on the board here probably joined or ran for election for the common good. And that's what I go back to on this. That's why I don't support backyard chickens. And I would be open to what Commissioner Blasco said about 3 acres or 2.5 acres for that matter. But we're here for the common good. There was 3 residents that came up and spoke about backyard poultry. At least to my knowledge, 2 of the residents had complaints from their neighbors. Going by this corn ordinance, I wasn't a big fan of having neighbors' permission. But the residents that did have backyard poultry got a complaint from their neighbors. So there was an issue there. Valid or invalid, there was an issue that their neighbors complained. Going back to the common good thing, there's probably residents, as Virginia stated, that have chickens, that their neighbors don't have a complaint with them. They upkeep their property, they have backyard poultry, and it's not an issue. And they maybe even share the eggs and whatnot. But that's to the common good where they're maybe upkeeping their property, and our code enforcement personnel aren't driving around looking for chickens in people's backyards. It's all
They shouldn't
complaint
be.
driven. Yeah, it's complaint driven.
It's complaint driven.
Correct. So
As
there
is-
was
as
complaints put in place.
Fireworks are too.
Yeah, there was complaints put in place.
Right.
The complaints were put in. Code enforcement officer went out. There was chickens there. They were cited. Now we have 2 residents that are unhappy that their poultry has to be removed through our current ordinance. So that's where this all came from. And like I said, I'm going back to the common good of the community. Now, there's 2 residents that spoke here. There's many residents, as Virginia stated, maybe spoke online. To me, it's easy to speak online. Anyone can post something on their phone, whatever it is, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever your method is. That's easy to me. Anyone can do that, one way or the other. We've had, best of my knowledge, maybe half a dozen residents that came to this meeting in support of chickens. And you could say, well, how many came that didn't support it? My experience is you're not going to have them come until you have the chickens here, and this room will be full because there'll be complaints going to the code enforcement office saying that my neighbor's got chickens, their coop's not held properly. And I think that puts us in
But
a
you're
great...
speculating, and I just
No.
got admonished by
Yeah, but I'm just
by
saying
Mr.
that's
Zona
a
for-
gray area
for
because we've had
speculating.
complaints is what I'm going by. We've had 2 complaints, and we responded to those complaints.
I've had 12 people notify me through my cell phone, whether calls and texts.
Mm-hmm.
All 12 are in favor of. I've had 0 people in Ward 7 say, I don't like the chicken idea.
Where are they
0.
tonight?
So here, my thing, is this not a democracy?
No, that's what I'm
Does
trying
the
to get to
majority
back
rule?
to the common good.
That
The
is the
common
common
good
good.
is what we currently have, in my opinion, and that's just my opinion. And I'm open to the idea of growing it to a larger lot size, if it's 2.5, 3 acres, what the board could decide on. And you spoke earlier about having, so to speak, a trial run. I don't want to call it a trial run because I don't agree with that. But if we did the 3-acre parcels and it maybe worked, maybe we can come back in 3 or 4 years and we have a system that wasn't open completely up and said, you know what, maybe we can do it on a 1/4 acre parcel or a 1/2 acre parcel. We're already taking it down from 10 to 20 acres. And if we would decide to go down to what the staff said, that they would be open to suggestions, saying an acre, I would actually propose maybe a little bit larger, like Mr. Blasco said, maybe it's 3, 2.5, whatever it might be. And you can go with that. And if that works, then maybe we can look, a few years down the road to something smaller. But going back to the common good statement, the common good is, neighbors, like you said, taking care of their property and whatnot. But to me, this is 2 people that, I'm not saying they were not taking care of their property or their chickens, but there's 2 complaints that were out, and that's why we got responded. This is where this whole debate came from. There's 2
And you
people
might-
that have backyard
You
poultry.
might get those complaints anyway because they just don't like their neighbor.
Well, yeah, that's possible. We get those complaints regardless.
And I do have a few comments to make after you're done.
No, yeah, you can go. Go ahead.
Okay, I've been to a lot of meetings. I was at the planning committee meeting and I heard their input and I heard Mr. Ditka say, I barely understand the citizens' request for such an approval. How many parents were convinced by a teary-eyed kid to get a puppy with the promise that they will take care of the new pet? We all know how that turns out. People will tire of taking care of their new farm animals. What happens then? Well, first of all, I would like to say that some people do not consider chicken farm animals, and the township has been through this before, and we lost because our ordinance was not strong enough to define farm animals. And so that's why we're debating chicken, because we're taking that ordinance away from noise and nuisance and farm animals and separating them. Remember, that's why we're doing this. so we can have an ordinance in place specifically for chicken. And I know that it's really hard to reconcile all these entities, but I wrote down some comments that I would just like to say, because I've been at all these meetings and I think that I can pull some of this together and maybe come up with a little bit different take on it. First of all, my response to Mr. Ditka is, and too bad he's not here, is yes, we as commissioners all take seriously, as you do, on the Planning Commission, and we believe that all public issues are important and taken seriously. The link that he sent about salmonella was very interesting, but perhaps not complete, and at worst frightening, without some modifications. The article said that it was not uncommon in the spring to see an increase in cases of salmonella, and this spring was worse than others. Perhaps it was worse by linking it to, perhaps it was worse, but linking it to backyard chicken was a little disingenuous. We had more people and families locked down for months, perhaps thinking more about sustainability and entertainment and education for their children. Backyard chicken could satisfy all three of those criteria. As per my experience as a medical technologist, we saw more cases of salmonella around the fall and the winter holidays due to improper preparation of food, especially turkey. We will see this, we'll see if this trend continues throughout 2020. If it doesn't, we cannot blame it on the chicken. The more pertinent numbers would be those cases of salmonella in Westmoreland County and those counties surrounding Westmoreland County. This data is more pertinent than data across the country. Salmonella is a reportable disease and laboratories must report it to the county health departments. A little bit of information about salmonella, because I know salmonella very well. I grew it for many years. Salmonella must be ingested to cause disease, and you must ingest what is called an appropriate dose for the organism to cause disease. The dose for a child would be less than that of an adult, and an adult must ingest enough to make him ill. That's why some people eating at the same table and the same food do not all get sick. Some people ingest more than others. Thus, they are receiving a larger dose. The article noted children under 5 not handling chicken or other fowl. The reason is the same for coronavirus. Hygiene. Children use hand-to-mouth motions a lot. Some people, hand washing is the #1 way to prevent infections of most kind. Just an aside, turtles also carry salmonella. That's why the little painted turtles were pulled from the market, but I do not think that chicken will be pulled. Furthermore, we cannot judge whether parents feel their children are responsible enough for pets. It's not our purview. Parents have every right to determine if they want their child to have a pet. It's not up to the boards or the commissioners. It's a parental right. There has been mention of enforcement. Yes, that is an issue, but it will be dealt with if and when an ordinance or policy is in place. We have residents keeping chicken now. There's no way to predict how many people would want chicken, just as Mr. Silka said, just because they could have them. I venture a guess that it would not be many more than what we have now. By the way, our old ordinance was thrown out by the local magistrate because it said farm animals. And yes, chicken do prevent Lyme's disease by eating the ticks. And by the way, if you want to know if those eggs are old or not, old eggs float. Put them in water. Okay, I also read Ryan Fonzie's policy analysis. Ryan's team also mentioned children not being responsible enough to have pets. Well, here we go again. It's not up to his team or the commissioners or either board to decide for parents what is appropriate and at what age for children. So parents might make mistakes. So what? What parent hasn't? Ryan didn't mention who was on his team. Was it only staff, as he said? Who picked the team? Why wasn't a resident or two on the team, to be fair? It might be more beneficial to do a study as to what residents are not under protective covenants to get an idea how many properties would be impacted by an ordinance dealing with chicken or other farm animals, since covenants don't count. Just count those things right out of the picture. The impact on North Huntington staff is important. However, in the past, there have been ordinances that impact the staff, and the staff has managed to handle the ordinance. It happens. Things change. Our community is one that has changed multiple times over the years. Change is inevitable. Our staff was more than competent at dealing with COVID-19. They had to do a lot of changes for that, and they did well. And I give them an attaboy. In addition, I'll just mention I'm in favor of public hearings on the new ordinance before it is approved. And should it be complaint-driven enforcement? Perhaps, perhaps not. I think we should look into that. I'm opposed to permitting letters from adjacent properties. It's just not fair to put people in these positions. And after studying the universal construction codes and testifying at hearings eons ago, I'm not entirely sure that they apply to chicken coops, but this needs further study. Ryan and his staff worked hard on their draft, and so did Virginia. My thanks to all of you. Now perhaps we can take the best of both and develop an appropriate, easily enforceable ordinance. It's not how we feel about chicken or like or dislike chicken. It's about having a workable, enforceable, reasonable, fair township ordinance.
All right. So Virginia, I do want to say we do appreciate your efforts. I know you put a lot of effort into this, so don't feel that my criticism of this is anything personal against you. I know you've really invested your time into that, and I apologize if I misconstrued your previous statement. So I just want to acknowledge you for that. Fran, do you think you would feel differently if you felt in a neighborhood that wasn't under protective covenants?
To tell you the truth, Brian, you brought that up before, and I don't think it's any of your business where I live, okay? And for one thing, when I moved into that home, we didn't buy it because of this covenant. We bought it because of the property. We liked the property and where it was located. The covenant came later.
But would you feel differently if you lived in a community where you weren't protected?
No, because I grew up around farm. I come from Newcastle, Pennsylvania, where we had the Future Farmers of America. We had farmers all around us. We had dairy farms. We had chicken farms. We had all these farms. And to tell you the truth, no. If there was no covenants, and I moved into some place without a covenant, I wouldn't really care, Brian.
So
and that's not up to you.
Well,
because
actually,
you want your property protected, Brian? No, that's not why you are here as a commissioner. You are here for the public good.
Correct, and that's why I'm advocating for my stance. But you're kind of being hypocritical, saying that you want this, but this is not something that pertains to you. So this is just a discrimination.
Take off your mask. I can't hear you very well.
My wife is going to suggest that I keep this on, but you're being hypocritical here. So you're saying that we're looking for the community good and you want to pass something, but this doesn't affect you. So it can't negatively or positively affect.
If I move, it would affect me.
We don't know where you're moving to. Where you currently reside.
I also lived in Camelot. I didn't know they had a covenants either. I had pet turtles.
So we're being very selective, whether we say on property size or covenants, we're really limiting people. If we move to a more rural area, Unity Township is currently fighting this battle as well, where they have residents pushing, and Unity Township has assessed a $200 levy or fee against people that are currently violating their ordinance. I mean, that's a more rural community than what we have. This is a very desirable place to live. People are not moving to North Huntington because, hey, you can raise and not raise backyard chickens. Fran, I do like your idea of the public hearing. I would definitely support you on that. But what I keep hearing is, oh, we're going to pass the buck to someone else. we're not the ones that have to deal with this. So, hey, our staff figured out COVID-19. That's great. Did they want to do that? No. Are they paid to do that? Yes. But should we entrench them with further responsibilities? It's easy to say when you don't have to do it. Yeah, sure, do this. It just...
A few other things, not to interrupt you if
Go
you're
ahead.
done, Brian.
No, fine.
I know, I think it was Mary Ann. I got that right? Okay, thanks. You talked about some of the other poultry and you kind of felt, you were supportive of other types of poultry. And we had a young gentleman come up last month and he was, wanting a pet duck or, for the backyard. And I've said that before. So the chicken thing, people have chickens and they're currently not following the ordinance, and maybe we should take a look at that. And I think that's what we kind of did here. Obviously, we all had different opinions, but then 2 months down the road, if someone wants to have a sheep or a goat in their backyard, is that going to be okay? Well, they have it now, so is it okay to keep it? And that's a slippery slope that I kind of think that you could possibly get into by doing this. Like I said, I was opposed to it. I was fine with the current ordinance, and I would be open to lessening it, to 2 or 3 acres. But the problem comes down to, like I keep saying, it's the common good of the neighbors. Like Brian just said, people are not moving into this community to keep livestock and farms. If they're doing that, they're going to move somewhere where they could buy more property.
Well,
And
how
I'm
do
not
we know
saying
that?
Yeah.
Honest to God, have we taken a poll that says that?
Because we're one of the fastest
We
growing
have to be
communities in
careful.
Western Pennsylvania.
We have to be careful speculating.
No, I
Okay,
agree.
listen, I just got admonished about 20 minutes ago for speculating. Now I'm going to go ahead and say the same thing to you guys. How can you say things that we really don't know? We haven't taken any polls on this. Here's what I'm saying. I've had 12 people contact me. It's 12 in favor, 0 against. I represent the people. The people have spoken in my ward. 12 in favor, 0. I do as the people tell me to do. That's called democracy. That's what I'm supporting. Whether I agree with it or not, it's right now in Ward 7, 12 in favor, 0 not. I do what the people tell me to do.
And I'm not trying to say what you're saying is wrong, and I appreciate you saying, you're listening to your people that are calling you. That's great, but at the same time, there's people that aren't calling you that aren't in favor of this, and maybe they should be calling you. And I know you even said you reached out, I think last meeting, saying, hey, we're here on the TV, if you're watching on YouTube, reach out to us and let us know how you feel. But from my experience being on the board, when something like this happens, that people are active, it happened with the recreation center too, people that were strong supporters of it, and wanted, the township to move forward with that. And then, we actually put it on a referendum ballot, but I didn't agree with that. I thought the Board of Commissioners was elected to make that decision, and I was against it because of the amount of money it was going to cost. But right now, we have people that are strongly supportive of this. So they're calling their friends, their neighbors, they're putting things on social media to get support. But the people that I want to call them, there's a lot of people out there that aren't even know about this issue that's going on. They might not read the paper, they're not watching our meetings. But in my opinion, the people that I spoke with, and I try to reach out to some people that I keep in contact with, I think this will be bad for the community, as Brian says. I think we're a growing community. I would be open to the idea of larger parcels. And like you were even saying, that maybe that's the trial run. We could trial run larger parcels. And if it seems like it's working, maybe a few years down the road to say, hey, you know what, we can take a look at maybe doing the smaller parcels and work our way down. And to see if that's a more manageable way to tackle this issue. I don't want to take people's personal property rights away, but there is ordinances in place. And I think Brian stated, when you come to a community, if you have interest of owning backyard chickens, you might want to take a look at the area you're moving into's ordinance and say, well, can I even have them there? And not everyone knows. I mean, maybe you didn't even know you wanted a chicken last year and then you got one. And some of these residents might have not known that. But they should have done the research ahead of time if they were going down that path. I don't think, like Ron said, say it's acceptable that I'm breaking the law, well, and then you change the speed limit on Route 30 to 60 miles per hour because people are going 60 plus. That's not a right decision. I mean, we're all here to make tough decisions. And I agree with you saying, people to support, what they want to eat. And I agree with that, but those same people probably have tons of stuff in their cabinets that aren't made at their property. I mean, yeah, it is nice to know one thing. I mean, I have a backyard garden. I love it. That's some vegetables I can grow that I know where they're coming from. But all the food in my house isn't made, in my backyard. So there's a lot of other food that I buy that I might not know where it's coming from. Same with these residents. It's great that they can know where their eggs are coming from. But I'm sure,
We could accommodate that individuals if in fact they owned a farm where they could grow and live off the land.
yeah,
And really, in North Huntington,
doesn't exist anymore.
no, it doesn't. It used
Because we
to.
become a bedroom community. We used to be
Yeah.
more rural community.
Sure.
But now we're a bedroom community. People move here for the community, not for owning property and livestock.
But I don't want to have to move out of
No, I
this
understand.
community. I bought my house from my parents, and my parents bought that house in 1959. They were the original owners. I grew up with Rich Gray. He grew up with my sister. They went to school together.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we used to hang out at Manor East. How do you think he got that great tan? It all started at Manor East in the 70s, right? You know it. But I don't want to have to move out of the community just to accommodate my desire to have chickens because I want to have more say in what I put into my body. And the body is a temple, and we've got to take care of it. And I understand that, you know, we're in an area of impasse, but I'm going to tell you, if we were to take a vote right now on backyard chickens, yay or nay, I think I know how it's going to go. I guarantee you I know how it's going to go. It's going to go 4-3. Mark my words. I'll bet you a whole dollar.
I'd also like to address Brian, and I have to say, I love debate about things. We should never have groupthink. So I embrace people bringing ideas to the table. I'm with Eric, though. I think we need to listen to our constituents. We're not here for our own selves. We're here for our constituents. And I want to make clear that the case in Unity Township, the person had 20 chickens. That's a farm. That's not what we're proposing here. So it's like apples and oranges.
How would you feel if a neighbor had 20 cats or 20 dogs?
There's nothing in our ordinance
How would you feel if your neighbor had 20 cats or 20 dogs?
There's nothing in our ordinance
I
that
understand that,
prevents
but they're legal. So how would you feel if your neighbor had 20 cats or 20 dogs?
Brian, that's why we need an ordinance. You
And I'm
didn't get my last sentence. My last sentence said it all.
And I
Even
said-
if you didn't pay any attention
With
to the
all due
rest of
respect,
the
then we do have an ordinance and they're not
It is not how
following
we
it.
feel about chicken, or if we like or dislike chicken. It's about having a
We do have an
workable,
ordinance and people,
enforceable,
we do have an enforceable ordinance. We just have chosen
reasonable,
not to enforce it.
fair township ordinance.
But can we not review ordinance every once in a while?
Yes.
No, we
Just
can
out of-
review them whenever this board
out of
decides.
out of due diligence.
And what-
We've
what-
got some great people in the community that said, hey, would you guys please reconsider your current ordinance?
And I think what Zach suggested, we
Yes.
start with 3 acres. You go to 2.5.
Now you're
1.
discriminating.
Well, no, because
Yeah,
if
how
you
do you say no to that?
if you start with a
Eric,
smaller parcel,
I got a
believe
question for you, if you don't
Yes, sir.
mind.
Sure.
So you say we're discriminating for the people that don't have the largest parcels, and I can understand your thoughts on that, but wouldn't we be same discriminating for the people that have protective covenants too? Well, in my opinion, we shouldn't even get involved in that. That shouldn't even be stated in here, in my opinion. If we want to move forward and you say you have the 4 votes, great. But I'll fight that because that's nothing to do with the township. That's a private property owner matter. If they have protective covenants, it should not even be in our ordinance, that we have to verify that, in my opinion.
I'm going to agree with you.
Because
I mean,
that's a property civil suit between 2 property owners.
yes.
That has nothing to do with the township.
Right. So
But
I
in
think
the
what
why-
I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
If I'm understanding what you're saying.
Yeah, correct.
So certain people move into a certain community that already has a covenant in place by the builder.
Mm-hmm.
And those people say in that covenant, and they understand when they're signing that contract to live in a certain plan, hey, you understand when you take responsibility for this house, you realize there will be no chickens. And you go, yep, got it. I'm cool with that. Well, their signature just, they wavered. They waved off on saying, yeah, that's true. So I'm not saying that we go up against covenants.
No,
in
it's not our
community.
business.
Yeah, I don't think that we should. I mean,
I
if
know,
a
but I
covenant's
mean,
in place.
the draft that we have, and I think. and
That's
I'm not
that's
gonna
been
fast-
removed. We removed that language.
Yeah.
There's no mention
Yeah.
of covenants at all.
Yeah, I don't think anybody on this board is saying that we override any type of protective covenant.
Correct.
You know, that obviously supersedes, you know,
No,
but we're
but
looking
the
for
point
the rest.
was that Brian was coming down on me because he assumes I like chicken and I have a covenant.
Fran, I'm not assuming
So
you
then he's
like
coming
or
down on
dislike
me
chicken. I'm pointing out a
because
fact
of
that you
where
live in
I
a neighborhood.
live.
Correct. You live in a neighborhood that's protected by a protective covenant. So the
Yeah,
ordinance the township
But
implements
it
will
didn't
not
matter
affect
to me
you.
whether it had a covenant
it was a
or
direct
not at the
question. It
time.
was-
I have been there 21 years, Brian.
It was a direct question, yes or no. I wasn't implying that you were saying you loved them or you hated them. It was a direct question. Would your opinion change if you did not have a protective covenant? So to go back to what I
No,
mentioned on Zach's
it wouldn't
point,
change. My
that's fine.
opinion
That's fine.
wouldn't change.
That was just a simple question. I'm not debating you. I just wanted to ask your opinion on that. It's just an honest question. So on what Zach had said, we could start with 3 and move our way down. The problem, Eric, if we start with 0.25 acres, and you gradually try to move up, and Bruce just stepped out, but I believe those residents under ex post facto would be grandfathered in, and we can't touch them. So you can't go in and remove somebody for a law that they weren't currently breaking, and now a new law has been implemented. They are excluded from that. So if you start bigger, you can go smaller. If you go smaller, you can't go larger.
Yeah, but how do you not go larger? I mean, so now what you're doing is
So-
reversing it to the farmers and saying,
No, no.
farmer,
So if-
you got 100 acres, now you're not allowed to be a farmer anymore.
No,
because you got more than 0.25
You're-
acres.
So if you have 0.25 acres and say, hey, we're going to pass an ordinance that a quarter acre qualifies,
Sure.
and we say, hey, this is not working.
Yeah.
Everybody that has that permit, everyone that has participated before the ordinance is amended or changed, they are grandfathered in. It's called ex post facto. You do not commit a crime under the previous law.
The first 10 amendments, known as the Bill of Rights, weren't all put together in one day, were they, or were they not?
They were not. No.
They were stacked. They were built over years because socio-economical things. And this is what I'm trying to say.
Well,
We're asking people, listen, the last thing, my God, you stop and think about, I'm going to tell you, let me just say this. You had guys like Joseph Stalin, Adolf Hitler, Pol Pot, Mao Zedong, that knucklehead down in Venezuela, and all these people start meddling in people's civil liberties and taking them away, telling them what they can't do. Socialism, and I'm saying it again, I said it last month, it's a form of government control over the people. Now, what happens if you take their guns away? Don't even answer that. We know what's going to happen. That's bad. What happens if a government becomes so strong that now they tell people you will not have gardens, you will not have livestock, you will have nothing. Ergo, the state becomes their god, and you better respect the state, because if you don't, you disappear in the night, and he who controls the food controls the people. Now, I'm going to tell you something. Where this country's sliding in the socialism, this love affair that this younger generation has towards socialism, I scare to think what they're thinking, because they don't understand history. Socialism has contributed to 95 million deaths in the last 100 years. Socialism steps in and tells you you can't have gardens. Socialism steps in and tells you you can't have chickens. Before you know it, you better behave, boys and girls, because I'm going to tell you, if you don't, you're not going to get any food. And you can stand in the bread line all day long, because you know what? That's the only chickens that the government's going to provide you. We are in a scary as well as interesting times, and they're not for the better. And I'm telling you something. I live in a democracy where the majority of people vote. The majority rules. I got 12 people on my telephone that are in favor of, 0 against. I have to vote according to my constituents, and it is up to us to figure out what the limitations are to what the people want.
I'm gonna
if
bring Mr. Silka into this conversation. Last meeting we had, you mentioned about we're developing a saldo.
Correct.
And that might help as to some of the zoning issues, or
No.
No.
No, the SELDA is a subdivision land development ordinance. Well, it's not going to help.
So it'll help from there on in, not.
No, it's not going to affect zoning at all. It affects how you develop the land, construction standards, time frame. It doesn't address any land use, just how you develop it.
And I might add, the reason we are looking at that saldo is sometimes you have to look at your regulations, and you have to say, are these regulations appropriate for today? And I can honestly say, I don't think our regulations are appropriate for today.
If I can say, we heard here a lot of times tonight from a lot of us that, how dare we tell somebody what to do with their property? That's not our job to tell them. But that's what we're doing. If we vote for an ordinance, that's what we're doing. We're saying you can have chickens, but you can't have any other livestock. We are telling them what they can do. So don't say we're not telling them, because we are. Because then can I go get a goat to chew my grass so I don't have to cut my grass? And then I'm going to come here and say, don't tell me what to do with my property, like you guys are all saying. We're telling people what to do with their property. We sure are. We are. I mean, there's no getting around it. And
that goes both ways.
We are permitted
goes
to make
both ways.
suggestions about what the township should look like.
oh, we can make suggestions. So if we pass this, that's just a suggestion.
No. it
No, we're
becomes
telling
an
them you can have
ordinance.
chickens, but you can't have this.
Okay, do you want to tell
So
them
why
they can't have
discriminate against
chickens?
why discriminate against farm animals
Okay,
if
you
you
all
want
want to
to?
tell them they can't have chickens?
I think my opinion's been pretty vocal that I was against chickens probably eight years ago, and people that have been in the, I don't want to say chicken business, but are supportive of having backyard chickens, they were all aware. I mean, I would tell all these residents, I do not support you to have backyard chickens. I'm sorry.
So
For their lot sizes. And that's just my opinion. And I keep getting back to that, and I think you just hit the nail on the head to me, is it's got to stop somewhere. And like you said, Fran, we are here to put policies in place. That's our job. And the policies that we put in place, in my opinion, are for the common good of the community. And I think for the common good of the community, not allowing backyard chickens is for the common good. Now, having backyard poultry for some residents, it might give them lessons to learn for their children, fresh eggs, they know where they're getting from. Sure. But it's also adversely affecting some property owners, and that's their opinion. And I would think if you would pull, and we can't do that, we can't take a straw poll of the community like we used to years ago on election day, but if you took a straw poll of everyone that went out to vote, I would, in my opinion, the majority of people in this community would be against backyard chickens. And maybe that I'm wrong. Like you said, you have people call you with supportive, but my experiences in the past, when issues like this come up, people gather support, right? They create groups. Last time we had the chicken thing, they had a chicken, I want to call it a group or, community or club. And they all came up. This meeting room was full of seats back then because we didn't have to worry about the virus. And the meeting room was completely full just from that group. There was standing room only. Right now, we're dealing with a lot less people that are supporting the chickens than we did previously. And maybe they figured, they gave up on it because we didn't pass it back then. We just said the ordinance is what it is. And like I said, I'm against it I'm completely honestly fine with our current ordinance. But I'm open to the idea, since it's come up, to take a visit at it. And like you said, Virginia, every time it is a good policy to revisit our policies and regulations every so often, because times do get out of date. Something needs updated. We've all experienced that from being on the board. And I think we are doing that. It just, when you get to the point of having quarter-acre parcels with backyard poultry, in my opinion, that's going to become an issue for the greater good of the community. And that's just my opinion. And then, like I said, so we're saying chickens is okay. I'm big on property owners' rights, but we have to be here for the common good. So the guy that wants a goat, a sheep, what if I want a cow in my backyard? I'm going to milk it every morning and get milk. I know where the milk's coming from.
I know, but right now
So
we're dealing with chickens,
yeah, but
and I
we're
think
here.
we have to do issue by issue.
No, yeah, but we're here
We
for
really
the
do.
common good.
I agree.
And the common good is trying to make our community the best community we can make it. And like Brian said, we're a growing community. People are moving here, and I don't think, in my opinion, again, people are moving here to have backyard poultry.
Okay,
I don't know.
Entertain-
I don't know whether they're moving here to have backyard poultry or not.
I don't know
but,
either.
Several years back, I served on the Route 30 Commission, and we broke into small groups and everything. And one of the places that they said that they would really like to be is Mount Pleasant, which I thought was like, oh yeah, Mount Pleasant, that's a really nice community, and it's because of the rural aspects. And then there were people that actually gave their input about North Huntingdon, and they said they liked North Huntingdon because of its rural feel. Not that it's a rural place, but that it feels rural because it's outside of Pittsburgh. It's far enough outside of Pittsburgh that you can still get the feel of being rural. Now, I wouldn't call it rural any 10 years later because we have we have so much building going on. It's unbelievable, and business and housing.
And I think, like maybe like Brian said, Mr. Schuster left it, but you know, a lot of people complain to us about him developing all the old farmland. And I always said, if you want the community to stay as a farmland community, buy up the farms before the developer buys them, put all the homes on them, and you can do what you want and you keep the farm. So, I mean, yeah, the community has changed more so to, well, maybe one time, maybe going back 30, 40 years ago, as a rural community, more so. And now it's a bedroom community. It's not, we're keeping backyard chickens and backyard farm animals. It's a bedroom community.
Yeah, I think that people still like the feel of the rural aspect of North Huntington.
Now, all these are my last comments for the night because I think we're just beating a dead horse at this point. I do agree with Eric. If we were to vote on this tonight, I believe it's going to be a 4-3 vote. But we're listening to the advice of our management staff that we pay and work here every day. And it's going in some of our ears and out the others. Say, it'll be okay.
But they work for the people. But they work for the people.
What we're doing, though, to them is putting more pressure, jobs, tasks on them. So we can raise our taxes for the residents here in North Huntington to hire more staff to do this.
You know that's not the right answer, and it's not going to happen.
I know. I feel
Not
the
as
same
long as
way.
I'm on this.
So why would we
never.
do that? So I think, as Commissioner Hagas suggested, we can start with 3 acres, and I think probably we'll have at least a strong majority, overwhelming majority as a board, and you could always revisit and work your way backwards. But to try to start small and say this didn't work, let's increase it, that's going to create more headaches.
But if those 3 acres are owned by companies that have covenants, then nobody's going to be able to get the opportunity to do this trial run. Now, all of a sudden, by de facto, you've eliminated everybody that could give it a whirl. Just because you said, well, 3 acres.
Well, 2 acres.
Crap. I don't know anybody has 2 acres.
So again, I agree that we should do a public hearing on this. I think the way this ordinance, though, again, appreciate everybody's input on this. I've tried to do as much research as I can on this, but North Huntington is one of the fastest growing communities in Western Pennsylvania. The statistics are there to support that. We're not going to dissuade people from buying here because of this, but we are going to make a lot of residents in precarious situations when I have to call their neighbor and say, hey, listen, I'm sorry, I had to report you because your chickens are...
Well, we do that already with fireworks.
Again, that's a separate issue.
No, a complaint is a complaint.
Well,
a nuisance is a nuisance. Let's keep them.
And we have a
firework
firework. We have a firework ordinance for that.
And it's not working, brother. Because I still have people in my community.
But we fall under the state law, and that's unfortunately a predicament that we were put into by the legislature, not of our own doing. This is going to be creating our own headaches.
Well, the state needs to stay out of our business.
I agree.
This is our community.
I'd just say one last thing too. We've heard a lot of different communities that allow chickens, and I believe every one of them that was brought up is not even in Westmoreland County. They were all in Allegheny County or neighboring counties. Let's talk Westmoreland County. Hempfield doesn't allow it. They're the biggest township. We're the second biggest township. Unity, as Commissioner Blasco said, they're a rural township. There's farms. They don't allow it. I mean, let's talk Westmoreland County instead of going outside of our county. And my last thing too is just what Commissioner Blasco said too. I think we do have to take the staff's recommendation into consideration. I'm not just going to say they work for the people, which they do, but if we tax them to their breaking point, what's next? If they can't handle it, and again, I'm not putting words in their mouth. They didn't say they can't handle it. They said it's going to be tough to do with the staff we have. We're going to end up, if too many people get chickens and we get too many complaints, we're going to have to hire somebody. It is going to cost money. So.
And when Commissioner Blasco and Jonah were talking about cost and money, the township's going to be making some tough decisions here. I'm sure Jeff can tell us that. We're on budget time. So we're already going to have to be making tough decisions as it is now, let alone creating more work on the staff as it is.
But this is why we were elected, to take the people's, situations, thoughts, and ideas and talk it out amongst ourselves. And hopefully our constituents will get in touch with us. I've asked all of you, please do that. I believe in the power of the people. I honest to God, I do. I think we can govern ourselves. And so I don't think we need to have the state and the feds. No offense to those organizations, but, I think we know what's best for our community. And I understand. And I tell you what, I always bet $1, and I'm $79 to the good on people that I bet. So be careful betting against me. I bet if we took a poll right now, who would be okay with letting a rhinoceros into the township? I can guarantee you it's going to go 7-0, all in favor of no. And that is for the common good, because rhinos are very huge. They can do a lot of damage. So my point is, for the most part, I think we can all figure out what's safe within our community and what isn't safe, what poses a threat and what doesn't. And maybe I can live with that, and maybe I can't live with that, that 4,000-pound rhinoceros. Nobody would, I would hope. And if somebody did, I don't know, I might have to ask for a doctor to be present. Who? Oh, man. Okay, we got one.
I just want to say one last thing too, and that's North Huntington does not have any agriculturally zoned land. And so you really can't compare us with any other township in Westmoreland County. So it is the way it was laid out in the 60s. We don't really have any control over that. You can't go back and create agriculturally zoned land. And just because we're debating chickens now, we're not debating other farm animals right now. And I think the answer to that would be a lot different if we were debating other animals. We're only debating chickens.
I know we're not really doing much more debate. Everyone seems like they're giving a little closing arguments, but to me, and like I said, I'm not supportive of the chickens at all, but to me, if someone has a chicken, I don't know what the difference of a chicken or a duck, or you were saying some of those other poultries, the guinea hens. The research I've done, they actually said, like you said, that they're good to have with your chickens because they protect the chickens from actually other predators that come. And ticks. So to me, it's still picking and choosing. Like you said, Eric, we shouldn't pick and choose winners and losers. But that's exactly like Ron said, what we're doing. We're picking in winners and losers, who's going to win, who's going to lose. Whatever we decide to do, you're still somewhat saying someone you can't do it, someone you can do it, no matter what the size limit is. And even in here, if you said there's no size limit, there's other things in the rule, the pros draft, that would limit people. If just because a person's renting, why, if they rent a house within enough space, why should they be limited? That's why. I mean, so no matter what you do, you're limiting some people in some aspect.
My last comment, I promise this will be it. Just what you said, Virginia, we don't have any agriculture area in North Huntington. Hempfield does, Unity does, and they don't allow chickens either. We don't have any. Why should we allow chickens? We don't have any agriculture. I think that plays into why we shouldn't have them, actually.
Well, we're different, and that's my point. We're different. We make our own rules based on what our citizens want.
Oh, they make their rules too.
Fran, do you have anything else?
I was just going to add under old business that we had discussed a noise ordinance along with the chicken ordinance, then we separated them. And I asked Mr. Silka to look into a noise ordinance.
Okay.
So he's going to be doing that, and I thank him very much for the time he's going to put into that. But I just wanted people to know that we aren't forgetting about noise and things like that.
Yeah, Fran, I've been talking.
Brian, you'll be happy about that.
Yeah, I've been talking with Chief Rizzo about that recently. I also talked with Jeff about that, and that's been something I've been pushing for. So I think that's something we can probably collectively agree on.
It is in the works. You'll have a draft very shortly.
Commissioner Atwood, do you have anything else?
Considering I started this whole thing, no.
All right. Well, I guess I'll say my last 2 cents if it is any. So, like I said before, I think I was the only one on the board at the time that we went through the chicken debate, and the room was a lot more crowded. And obviously, the board changed, community changes, but this whole debate started from 2 residents that were complaints went through and started, which I commend you 100% coming up to the meeting and organizing. Like I said, you've done a lot of work, and I appreciate some of the information that you get supported to us and we could read. They organized a group to get support for the chickens. I don't believe that there's anyone organizing for anti-chickens, as you would say, Eric, so that the people were speaking. But I get back to the greater good of the community. The chickens are this week. Like I said, the sheep's, maybe goats next week. I have a bad time picking and choosing losers and winners. To me, in my opinion, if you would look up farm animals, chickens are going to fall in the farm animal category. Whether you like that or not, that's probably a statement of fact. A dog, a cat, that's a pet. Now, do people consider farm animals pets sometimes? Absolutely. People probably have cows they consider a pet that they would never slaughter that cow. It's a pet. But in my opinion, if you would look up a chicken, it's a farm animal. It's not a pet. And that's where I get to the whole debate is not allowing farm animals in our community. Now, I was opposed to it completely. By people's support, I think maybe like Virginia said, maybe our regulation or ordinance on backyard poultry is maybe limited. And like the staff has put in a lot of work, and their recommendation was 1 acre. To me, that was maybe a little bit too far on the small end, but that was my opinion. I think overall, I mean, there's been healthy debate. Like you said, Eric, you've had that dollar bet. You think you have the support, so we can see where it goes next week. But I continue to say I'm not in favor of it. I would be open to the idea of a larger parcel, but what this ordinance is written currently, I cannot support. I don't know if that.
Well, how do you feel about zoo animals, like snakes?
Well, I think that's what. I mean, those are kept in someone's home. But kind of like you said, Ron, about the rhinoceros. I know you're kind of being tongue in cheek, but what if a person is avid, and I'm maybe saying it because of the Tiger King guy on Netflix, but what if a person's avid about tigers? You might have a little bit different debate. Some people might think a tiger in someone's backyard is pretty cool. They can come up to the cage and look at it. So, I mean, well, if they're passionate about it, and Facebook says it's a great thing. So I mean, it's a slippery slope to get into. Like I said, that's why I look at it as farm animals and domestic pets. They're two different categories. I don't think that's it, I believe, for planning and engineering topics.
Is there any direction for staff? I mean, is there a next step that you want us to take a look at? for the
Perhaps a
upcoming
public
month?
hearing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we want to move forward. I appreciate you for saying that, Jeff. I know, Fran, you said you were open to having a public hearing. I know Brian said he was open. I would definitely be open to doing that. I think that was a recommendation actually from the staff too, before we'd approve any type of ordinance to have a public hearing.
Yeah, well, so we won't be voting on it next week if we have a hearing, if we have public hearing.
That would be correct. We would have to put that in the paper. if we
Yeah, the
had a
hearing
public
won't be until next month because with advertising guidelines.
Okay.
But I'm okay with
I would
moving in that direction.
Yeah, I would agree with that too.
And maybe some people can get back to the board members and state their opinions. All right, thank you. Any other old business? I know, Fran, you mentioned about the noise ordinance. We're going to take a revisit of that. Yeah. Anything else? Any further board comments?
Just one thing I want to kind of look ahead on, Halloween this year. Used kind of a precarious situation with the COVID-19, but something for the board to think about how we want to set our times and dates. This year, I think families will be happy it's a Saturday, but just things to think about for upcoming meetings to set our Halloween times.
Any other further board comments? If not, I just need a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor by saying an aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned at 8:56.